All right, welcome back. So now we are getting into our B, C, and our singular D tier, the worst character in the game, in my opinion, as a new player. So, to start off our B tier, a character, once again, I have not played, but I've seen a lot and seems very strong if you can get him online, and that's Malachite. Malachite, the Crunch Mech, has the passive ability Titanic Might. Gain 4 attack damage and 1.5% size for every 200 max HP. And then Crunch Flurry, immediately cast 4 multi shot. So that's 4 attacks. All this will be based off of your AD. Um, he scales pretty well into the game. Health is definitely, I would say, more important as a baseline on him than it is on Emerald. But if you get there as a late game, big, chonky boy, you'll probably go top two. He's very solid. But I would say in the B tier, what separates the B tier from the A tier is I think the A and the S tiers you can literally click on every single game and climb. The B and the C tier, especially, are going to be you need a little more setup. You kind of need to know what you're doing. You need ideal lobby conditions, whatever. Ideal lobby conditions for Malachite are, in my opinion, something that has health plus attack speed or inner fire. Um, but we will get into his traits. Malachite's traits. So, topological shooting is actually not terrible. I've seen it used before. Again, this would be in something where you're using health plus attack. Um, and I've seen it often used with Vent, and you just get crazy amounts of attack speed, and you almost turn into a James in a way. Um, Things that are really, really, really good in the early game. If you are on the level 5 portal and you can get Valor Medal, it's almost worth all inning. So that way, in the early game, you can just stack this and you just try to play a non econ based strategy. You want to play a much more aggressive strategy. But fully armed, just really solid. Gigantification, very solid. And then seismic aftershock, very, very solid. So, in an ideal world, you get Valor Medal in the early game, and then you'd parlay that into something like Seismic Aftershock, and then get Gigantification to cap it off, and maybe a fully armed in the late game. And you were just going to do absurd damage. It scales really well into the late game, has a very decent mid game, and a fine early game. Um, but I would say Malachite is the top of the B tier, probably the closest to A tier. Some people would say Malachite's better than Emerald, maybe even better than Sylvie, but based off of the games I've seen and the games I've played, it stays in the B tier. Next one is actually another one of my personal favorites, K, the Space Scout. So K's passive is Solid Case, Shield Decay Proportion reduces by 30%. And then Astral Barricade, deal 225 magic and gain 100 shield stacks. K is one that I think you need ideal lobby setup for to work. But if you get the ideal lobby setup, oh boy, this K does a lot of damage. Um, so the way that K wants to scale into the game is by getting a fuck ton of shield and then converting that shield into this. So, the ideal conditions are spell and shield. The reason that the ideal conditions are spell and shield is because you want to get hella shield, and then you want to convert that into mech demolish damage. The way that mech demolish works is every 10 stacks of shield boosts ultimate skill by 200%. If you can get the instacast from spell, and you can get the preemptive shield at max at 600, this first ultimate will deal upwards of 3,000-4,000 damage. I've legitimately just seen it because I've had this setup before. Just one shot everything. Boom, boom, boom. The best third one with this is probably either Ultra Nan Attack or Mech Protect. Both are quite good. And if you get the setup, K is very scary. The problem is sometimes it's hard to scale into the game. Um, and if you don't have ideal conditions, like if there's no attack, no inner fire, and no spell, I don't care that shield's available. I don't think you're gonna last long enough. I have seen people set it up with frost before. I've seen some people go like HP shield, but HP shield has always seemed to be unimpressive to me. You can also go a slightly different setup, and I found it's been okay if you go specifically with like attack speed, inner fire, stuff like that, crit. And that is getting both counteract and resist. So you're actually not really going to buy a lot of shield in this one, and you're just going to constantly have 100 MR and armor. Um, so this one would be good if you have like attack HP, crit HP, attack crit HP as your main three that you would buy. Um, I would say this is a lot worse than the Mech Demolish setup. Mech Demolish can win games. This is like I'm playing for sixth. K is a very feast or famine from my experience, and that is why I have K in the B tier. Next character in the B tier, Hellsing. I've seen a lot of Hellsing. I have not played a lot of Hellsing. Um, Again, no money, broke boy. So Hellsing's passive is Exiled Wounds. When an enemy is vulnerable, armor and magic resistance are reduced by 30%. That's a lot of shred. Deal 150 magic damage in all vulnerable stacks applied to an enemy is 30 plus 30% within 3 seconds. So, you want Hellsing with either inner fire or attack with a curse setup. If you do that, he can absolutely steamroll any tank, any carry, any healing, any Jenny. The problem I've seen with Hellsing is it actually seems like his early game's pretty bad. It's kind of hard to win streak and maintain econ, which is something you can do with Jenny, Cole, Aloya, even to some degree Sylvie and Emerald. Um, I've seen a very few people start off strong on this character and hit the ideal late game. I feel like you need some high roll conditions, but we can also look at his traits. Hellsing's traits. Evil Spreads obviously pairs really well with his passive. Um, Colin's Apple, actually incredible. Massacre is okay. Dead Scream, if you have a spell setup, very solid. Devour Fear is pretty mid. It's pretty mid. And then Etherealization, it's kind of a meme. It's losing 100 magic resistance is a lot. Even with 50% evasion, a lot of games you're gonna run into magic damage. It's gonna be really hard to run into games where all you're seeing is physical damage. So I would say maybe don't click that one, but the rest of them are all really solid. Next, Jacqueline. I think the last, nope, not the last. The second to last character that I don't own, that I have not played. So that's my disclaimer. Um, Jacqueline scales pretty well into a fight and really enjoys having a lot of attack damage. But as far as dodge characters go, I've seen less Jacqueline's having success than I have seen Sylvie's having success. Again, it might be because she's newer, nobody knows how to play her, etc. Jacqueline. Ultimate skill reduces an enemy's evasion chance by 40% for 1 second. It's fine. Ultimate skill grants 150% critical damage for 1 second. That's actually pretty good. A lot of times you will see Jacqueline go with crit. Damage coefficient is increased by 150%. Very good with all the AD that you want to get. Passive skill triggers 1 second faster. It's solid. And pairs really well with home game. And then Shadow Dancer. I believe this is just for the combat. If I remember correctly, this is just for combat. It feels like it would be pretty broken if it was permanent. But basically, if you set up these two together with something like a Shadow Killer or an Afterimage Blade, it'll be very good. So, I think the biggest thing that I've run into when playing against Jacquelines is they have a harder time getting to their late game than Sylvie, because even though your early game is better, your late game isn't quite as dominant, and heaven forbid, you're trying to go for evasion, attack, it crits. It's really hard to get into all of that at once. So, I've seen a few flexible builds, I've seen it be successful, but I've never been overly impressed with Jacqueline myself. I can't tell you the ideal conditions for it. I can just tell you I haven't really seen many ideal conditions for it. Now we're back to a character I have played. Alicia. So, Alicia, every 1 second, freeze the enemy by 20 stacks, deal 20 magic damage. Freeze the enemy by 100 stacks, deal 100 magic damage. It's a freeze mage. You want to build freeze. But where does Alicia really, really shine? Alicia really shines in game states where Curse is available, or Poison is available, or Inner Fire is available, so that way you can have a Frostfire setup, which is really good, because you're going to be freezing people by a lot, and then if you can go Inner Fire, you can actually get a lot of damage off of your Frostfire. And then for the traits, Alicia. Ultimate adds additional frost stacks. Always solid. Spell is also fine. Snowmaker, again, fine. Accelerated freezing is one where you really want to pair this with Cold Crystal and maybe something like Or Sword Soul or Winter Orb. These three together gets pretty nasty. These three together gets pretty nasty. The biggest thing is you want to stack these negative status effects on your opponent. So you want to stack them with Curse, you want to stack them with Poison, you want to stack them with Frost, obviously. And if you can stack all these together, you can really put together something where your opponent doesn't get to move by the time you kill them with your Snow Avalanche or your Curse Ultimate or your Poison Ultimate. I played a game of Alicia on stream, I think it was last night, where I got this perfect, ideal setup, and literally nobody could move. Like, we had a Jenny, and it didn't even get a chance to heal. Like, nothing hit me. I was taking literally 0 damage around, and I was dealing, 3, 4K. So, having a setup where you can get to that late game is incredibly powerful. However, I think it can be kind of hard to get to this late game. I think the early game is pretty abysmal from what I've played and what I've seen. I think there are some high roll spots. I think there's like nothing, even when I get down to my DK character, there's nothing in this game from a high roll spot that can't win a game. But I would say this is definitely on the lower end, and I think it's harder to get there than it is for something like K or Malachite or even Helsing, because you kind of need everything to go right. But if everything does go right, this character goes from B tier to Giga Ultra Unstoppable S tier. It definitely has an Exodia setup. But I did say it's the last character in our B tier, so now we get to the sad characters, in my opinion. First character in the C tier, Yukimura. This is probably going to be an unpopular opinion. I'm sure there's going to be somebody, if anybody watches this, in the comments that says, yep, this guy's a noob. Get him the fuck out of here. But, like, really? I've never been impressed with this character. It is not shown up in any of my games in a way that makes me go, oh man, how do I even deal with this? Even if you get to the hyper late game where this thing can melt and do crazy damage, I'd rather be playing James in like almost every instance. Maybe not in the mirror match, because this guy can melt a James maybe before James can melt him. Becoming untargetable for a second is incredible. But I haven't been incredibly impressed with it. Regardless, let's go over his passives. During a battle, gain 30% crit chance and then lose 3% crit chance after each hit. This is really good with a spell crit setup. Now obviously your spell can crit because it's physical damage, but in a setup where like you're instantly casting, turning somebody into a frog, you're getting the mana back, you're casting again. This is really good for something like that because you can do a lot of big damage very quickly. Cruelty, solid, gets the job done. Vault is actually pretty good with the quick ninjutsu setup. However, you're playing with fire a little bit because you're no longer untargetable. You no longer get that extra second of just to survive. Motorblade, you're not going to attack very fast, but you're going to hit really hard. Again, very good with this whole setup right here. Definitely does its job. Base damage of passive skill increased by 5 times of level. It's fine. It does a lot of true damage. That's pretty cool. And then Bloodbath, base damage is the ultimate, +5 for every 1% of enemies missing health. Once again, you cap off something like this with this, that first ult is going to do enough damage to one-shot a squishy. I've seen it. It's very good. However, a lot of times in these late games, you're playing against a Jenny, a Cole, an Aloya, a stacked Malkite, a stacked K, and it's like, buddy, you're gonna have a bad time. So if you incredibly high roll, you can probably definitely win games on this. There are probably people who have a lot of success on this. I just haven't really seen it, and I haven't been impressed with it. Now, for what I think is the worst of the characters you have to pay for, Brynhild. Every time I see this shit, it goes eighth. So, I actually have never even looked at this, so we're gonna look at it together. That's how little I see it, and how every time I see it, it sucks. When taking normal attacks, gain 20 shield stacks. That's fine. And then deal 150 magic damage and reduce attack damage by 50 for 3 seconds. So very good tank into AD setups. Layered peaks, more shields, that's fine. Counter-Strike. This one looks like it would probably be the strongest. Sunset Flare, it's another one of those where it's like, I guess it's a positive and a negative because you're stacking a ton of shield in that time and you're a lot tankier. But I don't know if I ever want my opponent's attack speed to be. Imagine doing that into a James and he just shreds through all your armor and you die. When taking normal attacks, permanently gain 3 HP. Okay, so this might be the setup. This might be the setup. Something like Hilt Mover into Highmountain. Because you permanently gain 3 HP every time you get. It's probably like Sunset Flare, Hill Mover, and Highmountain would be like the setup if you want to make this work. Especially if you get Hill Mover really, really early on in the game. And then you go into something like Highmountain or Sunset Flare. You'll have a ton of armor and MR. You'll be getting a ton of shield stacks, a ton of HP. Um, the biggest problem I run into is where's your damage coming from? Like that's cool, but how are you killing the opponent? Um, and that's the problem I've seen with this is it doesn't really tend to do enough damage that even though it's tanky and it's strong and that's very sexy, it doesn't really seem to have a win condition. Next, we will move on to our last C tier character, which is Moriarty, who got nerfed, even though it's not super good. There were a few one-shot builds with this before the patch. Every time I see this now, it win streaks for like the first 2 stages of the game, and then it just can't keep up. The biggest problem that I've seen with Moriarty is that it actually doesn't have a late game. Like, it has a very strong early to mid game, but if you're not rolling the lobby and you're getting to stage 4, stage 5, you're just not going to be able to keep up. We will go into his traits though. Poison lingering, super cool. If you combine that with terminal illness, incredible. Inflammatory plus black serpent, really good, especially if you get aggregated outbreak. These three together, excellent. Accelerated onset, if you get it with the setup with poison lingering and terminal illness, it will kind of take you over the top into a lot of matchups, and it'll allow you to get to that one-shot build. I would say the big thing with Moriarty is he wants a lot of the same conditions as Alicia, but Alicia just does what he wants to do a little better. Moriarty has a much stronger early mid game, but Alicia has a easier time getting to the point where it's like you can't move and you're gonna die. I've played this mirror match a couple times, and when they're both set up with their like Exodia setup, Alicia's is significantly better. Like it's not even close. So to me, Moriarty is very fun, very cool. I still think you can pretty consistently go fifth through third on it, but I think it usually caps out at around a third. And then maybe I just suck, but I think Wukong's the worst character in the game. So Wukong, every 1 second gain 40 inner fire stacks. Super pog. And then Wishful Staff, deal 275 physical damage. Very simple. Scales well with crit, scales well with inner fire. Scales pretty okay with spell. If you have like a spell plus inner fire setup, you can get it to where he does a pretty absurd amount of damage. Quickly, we'll go over his traits before we end the video with a full look at the tier list and a reminder of why I feel the way I feel quickly on each character. Inner agility, I think anything that makes your passive proc faster is always good. And it pairs pretty well with however you say this, Slayer. Inner fire stacks from passive skills increased by 5 times level. Totally cool. Defy. Ultimate skill deals an extra physical damage by 20 times of level. That pairs really well with Banish. Banish, ultimate skill has 40% chance of multicast. 5 times multicast maximum. What that means is you hit once, you have 40% chance to hit twice. Then you have a 40% chance to hit a third time, up to 5 times. It's pretty gross. It's pretty gross when you get this setup with spell, with defy, with maybe like inner agility. It does an absurd amount of damage, and it's really good. Problem is, it's inconsistent, and oftentimes you die before you get there. My theory is that the best way to play Wukong might actually be with petrificative and indestructible. If you can get both these set up, congratulations, you're very tanky. And then maybe you go something like inner fire HP attack or inner fire HP shield, whatever. But the thing is, Wukong has a pretty bad early game, bad to mid, bad to mid, and it has a dreadful mid game if you're not already ahead. And then even if you're already ahead in the mid game, you're probably gonna fall off in the late game. It kind of feels like you need a perfect everything to not bot 4 with Wukong. I have not seen a Wukong win a game yet. Again, maybe I'm bad. Maybe everybody that I play with is bad. But like, I pretty frequently play with like top 20 players on the ladder, and I haven't seen anyone do shit with Wukong. So, open to changing my mind, but that's my current take. And then quickly, we will go over the tier list top to bottom. Jenny, broken. Very reliable. I don't know how to spell. Broken, reliable, healer. Cole, flexible, tanky, drain tank. Aloya, safe, high DPS, drone merchant. Into our A tier. Quick thoughts on Asuka. Drain tank mage. Very annoying. Jenny Light. Merlina. Big damage. Big damage. James. Pew Pew Boy. DPS machine. Tank killer. Sylvie. Big dodge. Great scaling. Emeralds. Ultra Flex. Super tanky. Low-key broken. Malachite. Emerald Jr. Still big damage. Chunky Boy. K. Crazy scaler. Late game one-shotter. Hard to get going. Helsing. Definition of mid, but big DPS. Tank killer. Jacqueline. I don't know, man. Scales kind of. Not impressive. Alicia has Exodia moments. Usually kind of bad. Early game, tragic. Yukimura. Why play this over any other DPS machine? Brynhild. Why play this? Cool. Moriarty has almost Exodia setups. Not quite there. Safe for like top 5, top 6. Wukong. Please, someone show me how to make this silly monkey boy work. He's fun, but he sucks. So, that is my tier list, my thoughts. I appreciate you guys staying to the end and listening to my incoherent ramblings, please flame me in the comments. Let me know what you're thinking, and I will catch you guys next time.